Data centers / AI need huge amounts of energy. It needs to be 24/7. It can't be wind or solar.
Encryption, when you add quantum and blockchain together, cryptography, yes, you're making those systems completely unhackable.
We definitely need to invest more in European startups.
America is a massive single country with a common culture. Here, when you look at Europe, what do you see? You see fragmented capital markets. Hello out there in podcast land. You've tuned into The Dip, where we connect global money stories to the US and the US to the world's most important money stories. I'm Steven.
And I'm Kassandra. I haven't been able to find Daniel yet, but Steven's joined me for our weekly Q&A episode, where we're going to try to answer some of your most pressing questions and respond to your comments in our feed.
That's right. So if you have a pressing question or comment for us, then email us at thedip@dw.com, or you can always leave a comment or question wherever you're listening.
And we're still here at the Berlin Global Dialogue, but that just means that we have plenty of experts at hand to help us dig into some of your questions and get the best answers. So let's kick it off with a comment that Gary Suzuki asked us, or he posed the comment. I'm turning it into a question. Forgive me, Gary, because he wanted to know, I posted on one of our DW News videos. He said, today, China's building more coal-fired power plants than any other form of energy. They might reduce greenhouse gases as a percentage of total energy output, but not an absolute reduction. Data centers / AI need huge amounts of energy. It needs to be 24/7. It can't be wind or solar.
Yeah, we put this question to Mathis Richtmann. He was at the IMF World Bank meetings in Washington, D.C., where AI was a big topic. And of course, this question comment, I should say, was posted under a climate-related story.
First, I think let's talk about the AI build-out. And there's sort of from here is this discussion going on whether this is going to hit the labor market massively and people are going to be out of jobs because AI are going to take their jobs. And I think that's sort of where I see the IMF position. The managing director said today she's more optimistic that AI will drive productivity than being optimistic about AI making the world a better place. And I think she talks in that about what she calls the tsunami hitting the labor market. Now the Google position is slightly different, where they're like, well, but AI could provide sort of jobs in managing AI, and those could be entry-level jobs as well. So there's a split position here, but remember, and I think they both agreed on this, that the world is an unequal place, and the AI productivity growth may make the world even more unequal, and that a lot of the world isn't connected to the internet or energy or electricity yet. So that could be a problem to go forward. To your question on energy, and that I think relates to what the United States is doing on nuclear right now. Nuclear is set to be an important part of the AI rollout, but the United States relies heavily on imports for uranium, especially on Russia. And that just highlights sort of these interconnectedness of the world that I think we need to be taking into account when we think about these questions to go forward.
All right, many thanks for that, Mathis. Kassandra, one quick point I would add to what he said is that when we look at China, we see that they're not only building these coal-fired power plants, but they're also building renewable at the same time in the same kind of fevered, frenzied pace, which means that if we look at it, we don't really know which direction things are going, right? Is it going to be more sort of, pollution-emitting coal-fired power plants? Is it going to be something that's more renewable? And we also know that in China, there tends to be building for the sake of building, or that is, for the sake of growth. So it's hard to really say what the strategy is just from watching this happen, and to say all this coal-fired power plant is even going to be used.
Right. This does remind me of a conversation we had with Haim Israel. He's Bank of America's global strategist and head of thematic investing. That happened on our previous episode. But a big point of discussion there was AI, and that's something that you all have talked to us about many times. And with Haim, what we talked about was this kind of next level computing, right? Quantum computing. And on one of our videos about cyber security, its Cree 9599 wrote, once cryptography is anchored in quantum physics, it becomes fundamentally unhackable. You can break code, but you can't break the laws of physics. Now, I haven't taken a physics class in a long time, but when I hear words like unhackable or unbreakable, you're asking for it, right? But I did throw that to Haim, and here's what he had to say.
My perspective is that eventually quantum encryption, when you add quantum and blockchain together, cryptography, yes, you're making those systems completely unhackable. But to get there, the current technology that cryptography is based on right now cannot stand in front of quantum computing technology. So we'll have to adjust a lot of those digital assets, a lot of those blockchain technologies, everything, in order to prepare ourselves for the world of quantum computing.
Thanks to Haim Israel from Bank of America for that answer.
All right, let's take a look at another question. And this came to us from @UrbanStrainCon, who wrote, Europe at large needs to invest more into domestic tech companies and domestic startups. So again, a short and sweet kind of comment there. Now, Kassandra, as you know, last week I spoke with the head of the European Investment Bank, Nadia Calviño.
Yeah, and so this is going to be something that's going to be at the top of her mind all the time.
Absolutely, and this is what she had to say.
Yes, we definitely need to invest more in European startups and scale up so that great ideas, technologies and companies that are born in the EU can grow and prosper here in Europe. And that requires integrated, large, deep capital markets so that we can stop being the incubator of the world and be the leader in terms of unicorns and successful scaling up companies around the world.
Thanks to Nadia for that. And if you want to check out the whole conversation with either Nadia or Haim, you can find that episode in the same feed wherever you're listening or watching to this one.
You know, it's an interesting conversation that I had with Calviño, and what I find fascinating is this comparison between American and European capital markets, because fundamentally they're really different. America is a massive single country with a common culture, a common language, and it has this incredibly explosive tech scene that sort of fuels itself when it comes to investment. Here, when you look at Europe, what do you see? You see fragmented capital markets. You see many different countries. So
sometimes competing against one another to attract business.
That's right. Sometimes competing against one another. So is it fair to talk about both capital markets in the same breath? Is it so easy as to just remove regulations from Europe and say, now you have essentially the US? I don't know if it's so simple.
Yeah. Now, Steve, one of the reasons I'm so excited you're on the show this week is because you're really tapped into the German auto industry, and we do have a question along those lines I'm hoping I can throw to you.
Sure.
Great. This one's from Arcan2, who writes, after almost 15 years of Tesla Model S and soon also 10 years of the Model 3, there are really still no real alternatives from German manufacturers to those vehicles. There were no obstacles to making a competing product, and then people wonder why the cars do not sell. Now, this is definitely another comment rather than a question situation, but Stephen, it is something we hear quite a lot. People pointing to the German car makers and their struggle with electric, and the big question is always, what about Tesla?
I mean, in theory, this is correct, right? Why couldn't Volkswagen, for example, which is at one time it was the world's largest car maker, why couldn't it have come out with the killer electric car and really surprised everyone? The short answer, as we know, is that they were doing so well in combustion engine vehicles that they sort of kept their eyes on that game.
Right. It was a if it's not broke, let's not fix it situation.
And let's not tinker and innovate on it. And so Tesla really came along and ate their lunch. What I would dispute a little bit is that currently there are no comparable models. Now, I think for first adopters, for those who really love the kind of geekiness of electric cars and everything with the console and everything being different, then I think they really went for Tesla. They still are to some extent, but there are really comparable models now that are competing directly with Tesla. I think the challenge now for the German auto market and for German automakers is how do you then broaden this beyond the first adopters that really went for Tesla, who many of those car makers tried to imitate in the first few years, but how do you broaden it to people who aren't real adopters and really gung-ho about electric so that they say, you know what, I'm going to choose this, right? Even though I'm not so crazy about electric. I think Tesla really spoke to a large amount of the population who was excited about electric, still does to some extent, but even their sales are falling off.
Yeah, and the implication in this question here is that German car makers kind of missed the boat, or maybe missed the car on innovating a decade ago or even farther back. But now when I step back and look at the state of the German auto industry at the moment, I'm wondering, is the German auto industry missing the boat once again? Because we're seeing now serious conversations about the extension of this 2035 deadline to get rid of new combustion engines, right?
Yeah, this is right. This is the EU-wide 2035 deadline that says that all new car sales, there must be no emissions coming out of the tailpipe. That's not net zero. That is nothing coming out of the tailpipe. And that means battery electric vehicles. And what we've seen is that Germany has now said, as a government, they've agreed that they're going to push to sort of weaken this. And what exactly that means, we don't know, but it means we do know that it means extending the life of the combustion engine. Part of that is because that parts of the auto industry say that, hey, there's these kinds of e-fuels that actually, they have a net zero effect, nothing out of the tailpipe, but have a net zero effect, and they would allow us to hold on to the combustion engine while still meeting our obligations. Critics would say that technology is not proven. You're trying to sit on the combustion engine even longer and milk this cow for as long as you can, but you're not going to innovate. And then others would say to that, everyone knows things are heading towards EVs regardless. They're going to have to move in that direction. Just look at China. That's EV land. They still want to keep selling there. All right, that's it for this week. Remember that you can always like, you can subscribe, or you can leave us a comment or even a question, dare I say, under any of our videos.
And you can also send us a good old-fashioned email at thedip@dw.com. But until next time, you've been listening to The Dip.